Hey code artists, welcome to our lesson on code comments for programming languages. We bring this up so you can read it as well. We're going to talk about what the term API means, and I'm also going to show you how to install libraries for the language that we're using, both local to the project and also global for the entire computer. So the first thing we should talk about is, what does the term API mean? Because you're going to see that a lot, especially when we start talking about the third type of JavaScript comment called a JS doc. So API stands for Application Programming Interface, and probably the easiest example of an API that I can give you is a web server that has software on it. So a piece of hardware that has software on it that listens for people's requests for web pages and then serves those resources up and gives them back to the requesters, to the clients. So that's probably the simplest example of an API I can give you. And remember, it stands for Application Programming Interface. And if you look down here under our URLs, I have it listed right here of what is an API in plain English. Excellent, quick 5-minute read on what that means. So now that we have that out of the way, whatever software you're writing, we're going to just call that an API. So when you hear me talk about JS docs and how it provides documentation for your API, that's essentially the software that you are writing, the Application Programming Interface. All right. So next thing I want to demonstrate and talk about are how to install libraries. So a library, again, is a piece of software that's going to add functionality to your program that you don't have to write. If it wasn't for libraries, you would have to write all of the code yourself to get that same functionality. But luckily, lots of people out there have pre-written a bunch of libraries to give us functionality. The two that I'm going to demonstrate in this particular video is this readline sync right here, which is a library that allows us to read user inputs from the terminal window so that our code, we can ask questions of the user, take their answer, and do something with that answer. The next one I want to show you is how to globally install the JS doc utility so that you can use JS doc with your code. So let's get started. The first thing that you have to know before we even do this is that when you run IntelliJ, if you're on Windows 10, and I believe if you're on Windows 8, you have to run it in administrator mode. So simply right-click on it, and on the pick list, choose Run as Administrator. And that will allow you to do the installations that we need in the directories that we want. So once that's done, I'm going to click on this. The command that we use is a program called NPM, which stands for Node Package Manager. And since this programming logic class is using JavaScript, on the computer side we use Node, and the program that Node uses by default to install libraries is NPM, or Node Package Manager. So I type NPM space install space and then the name of the library that I want to install. And since I'm only installing this particular library locally to this project, not to the whole computer, I don't need the flag G or the -G that you're going to see in the next one. And then I type in the name of the library that I want to install. In this case, it's readline sync. So I type readline-sync and hit enter. And you'll see the NPM utility fire up, and I'm done. And it gives me a couple of warnings here, not a big deal. I don't have a file called package.json, which becomes supremely important in later classes if you become a web developer and you want to start doing like modern web development. You'll learn all about package.json. But for what we're doing in this class, not a big deal. So everything else here you can kind of ignore, because the rest of these are essentially the fact that there's no package.json. Okay, so now that I've installed this library locally, if I click refresh my project, you'll see that now I have this new folder called Node Modules. And when I click that open, you'll see I have a folder called readline sync with all of the software necessary to run the library readline sync. Now, to install a library globally, and the one I'm going to use is JS Docs, I do npm space install space, what do I say, JS Docs space flag G. Flag G means global. Flag is a hyphen there. It's a term from Unix. So I'm going to hit enter. It's going to go through, do a bunch of stuff, and now I have the JS Docs library installed globally so that I can use it. And that's going to be important when I show you about the 3 different code comments, specifically the JS Docs. Alright, on to commenting. So comments in code are a way for you to put notes or URLs or hints or any kind of documentation to your code for yourself and other humans. Comments are not for the program's compiler or for the language at all. In fact, it completely ignores it. So they're just there for humans to understand what's going on in the code. And I don't prefer to do a lot of commenting in my code because I prefer my code to be self-documenting, meaning I have variable names that make sense and that are nouns. I have function/method names that make sense and they're verbs. Everything I do is pretty verbose and chatty, so it should make a lot of sense. And what I typically reserve comments for are if I had to look something up at Stack Overflow and it solved a problem for me, I will typically use a single line comment called an inline comment to put the URL in there to help me remember later how I solved a problem, or to help somebody else who has to debug my code and they're like, where did he get that from? And I'll have the URL right to the answer there for him. So the first type of comment is a inline or single line comment, and that is simply created by doing 2 forward slashes. Some languages do a pound sign. In JavaScript, which is what we're using for this course, we use 2 forward slashes, and it's 1 line. You get 1 line to put your comments on. And so here I've just simply written below, I will demonstrate how to turn off code. And that's another use that I use for single line comments as part of my debugging process of my code. If I want to turn off certain aspects of my program, say for example a call right here to this method called setVar1, if I want to turn that off, I simply put my 2 forward slashes in front of it, and it will no longer be read by the compiler or the program because I've essentially turned it off by turning it into a comment. So that's another way that I use comments. Alright, the second type of comment is what I'm going to be using in all of my code examples that are up on our code repository for the course, are these block comments or multi-line comments. And the way that you create a multi-line comment is you simply do a forward slash and an asterisk, and then an asterisk and a forward slash to end it, and then everything that goes inside of that is considered comment and is not read at all by the interpreter at all, or by the compiler. Not one bit. So again, that's just for humans. Alright, on to the third type of comment. The third type of comment that we use in this particular language is called JSDoc, or JavaScript documentation comments. And it's slightly different than the block comment down here, where this starts with a forward slash and 1 asterisk. The JSDoc start with a forward slash and 2 asterisks, and then IntelliJ goes ahead and puts these asterisks right in here for you, and then it's ended with a asterisk and a forward slash. And what a JSDoc comment is for is it allows you to create human-readable web page documentation based on all of the JSDoc comments that you put in your code. And you typically put JSDoc comments at the top of your code, and then above all of your methods you'll have JSDoc documentation in there. And with this URL down here, this is essentially the instruction manual for how to use JSDocs. Now I'll go ahead and drag it over here. Here's all the instructions right here. But more importantly, they talk about all the different keywords that you can put in here and what they do. So if I click on this, it'll give me more information about what the author tag is designed for. As you can see right here, there's an example of that author tag that I am using right up here at the top. Okay, so that's fine and dandy, but how do I create that documentation from all those JS comments that's meaningful to my users? So it's actually quite simple. We just installed JSDoc here globally, so all I have to do is type JSDocs space and then the name of the code, the file, this JavaScript file that has all of the commenting in it. So I do code2.js, and if all goes well, it comes back and does that. I'll refresh my package there, and it didn't work. So, I think I put an S there. Whoops. js.code2.js. There we go. Whoops, my mistake. Sorry. Alright, I'm going to refresh my project there, and I get a new folder called out. I'm going to expand that, and you'll see here that I have some HTML files. The one I'm the most concerned with is this index file, so I'm going to click on it, and then in IntelliJ I'm just going to fire it up in the browser, and I'll bring it over here to you, and it creates this really nice looking web page. And you can see different things are links. If I click on main, it gives me all kinds of information about main that I put in there. You'll notice there's all the different setvar calls that I had. I had JSDoc over my two different methods, setvar1 and setvar2, so here they are right there. So these are just simply links that take you down to those portions of your methods right there. It tells you the line number, etc. There's a copy of the code, the source file right there. All of that is built right in. All you had to do was install JSDoc and run the JSDoc utility against your file, and you get all of this created for you magically. It's fantastic. Alright, sorry for the snafu down here with the extra S. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next tutorial. Thanks, bye.